Hello my fellow book lovers, welcome back to my channel. This video is a long time coming. This is my fall reading wrap up, so this is every book that I read in September, October, and November. I know, it's gonna be a lot of books. I in total read 29 books within that 3-month time span. So that's probably, that like averages about 10 books a month, which is I'd say pretty typical for me. Since it's a lot of books, kind of just want to get right into it. I don't have any statistics or anything like that for the books that I did read. I read a lot of romance. I feel like that's just implied at this point. Basically, that's all I read. Getting all comfy cozy in. We're also gonna ignore this box right here because you know what? It's acting as my coffee table for my coffee. The setup is not ideal. Let's get into it. The first book I actually ended up reading in September was Tangled Up in You by Christina Lauren. This is in the Meant to Be series. This is just a Disney retelling series. I know that every author that like gets part of this series takes on a different Disney story and then just like retells it a different way. This one is about Ren and Fitz, and Ren, who is the main girl, she raised on a homestead, like was homeschooled, never any technology. Basically, like they grew what they ate and like only went into town once a week to go get like necessities, things that they couldn't just like have on the homestead. So Ren is 21 and ends up going to college. She's just like, hey, I want to do this. I got accepted, and they let her go under like the conditions that she doesn't leave the school campus, she doesn't use any electronics that aren't like mandatory for school, and like basically she doesn't have friends. Like that's the only way that they would let her go. So she agrees to all their rules and she ends up going, and then she ends up meeting Fitz, and he doesn't really like her. So spring break comes around and she hears that Fitz is like going to Tennessee, I think, and she's like, hey, I want to see the world, let me hitch a ride with you. Basically, that's how their adventure begins, and it kind of goes crazy. It's really entertaining and really fun. Like, if you get past like the fact that this is supposed to be super cheesy and is literally just tangled in a, what word am I thinking of? Okay, how come I can't think of the word? In today's day and age. You know what I'm saying, right? Today's day and age. Set in modern day. There we go. That's what I was saying. That's what I was thinking of. Okay, modern day retelling. And just them becoming friends and going on this journey together. So that's what this is about. That was way too long of an explanation for this first book. I ended up giving this a 4.25 stars. Honestly, haven't thought about it since. I'd probably knock it down to about a 4 or even 3.75. I think I rated it so highly because I just really enjoyed it while I was reading it. It was super fun and like different for it to be like a modern day retelling. I think I just really liked it while reading it. It was super fun, super cheesy, and I think that was like kind of the whole point. So this next book I don't physically have. I ended up reading it on my Kindle, and that is If We Were Villains by ML Rio. I talked about this book a lot, okay? A lot. This is one of my 5-star reads of the year, okay? So let's just get that out of the way. I rated this book 5 stars. It went from a 3.25 stars to a 5 stars in less than 20-minute time span, okay? Let's just let that sink in. I obviously ended up really loving this book. This book follows 6 people in college. They go to this really prestigious art school for theater, and all they do is study Shakespeare. So this is a dark academia mystery almost, I want to call it, just because there is a mystery aspect to the story itself. And we're following Oliver. Oliver has just been released from prison for a crime we don't know if he had committed or not. During his last year at this prestigious art school, one of his classmates ends up getting murdered, and he ends up taking the blame for it. But basically, he's going through and telling the story what happened that year as to how he ended up taking the blame for this murder that we don't know if he committed or not. If you love dark academia, this is it. Honestly, I absolutely loved this book. Talked about it all the time. I literally like texted my friends and like was talking to my friends about it, like, oh my gosh, you guys need to read this book. Or like even my friends who don't read books and didn't understand, they were unfortunately had to hear me yap about it. That's how much I ended up loving this book. And I do highly recommend. It does deal with like a lot of deeper topics, and it is really heavy. So if you don't love that, then I wouldn't recommend this book. But overall, it's amazing. I absolutely loved it. It was so entertaining, and like I was very much like drawn in from like the very first like chapter. I can't remember how the chapters are broken up. Oh, they're broken up into acts because basically they always, they're in this professional art school, right? So they study theater and it's like broken up into acts. The acts are a bit longer, but yeah, it's amazing. I absolutely loved it. Next up, we have Betting on You by Lynn Painter, which is another one of her young adult romances. Again, this was another really fun read for me. Lynn Painter never disappoints with her young adult books. She just writes such fun, quirky banter and quirky characters, and just like a really fun storyline for young characters, if that obviously makes sense. But she just writes a really fun storyline that I feel like a lot of people can relate to no matter the age that you are. 2 main characters are both in high school, and they are both children of divorce. They meet because they're both both flying back to like their hometowns, and they're both flying back from like one of the divorced parents' houses, right? And so they bond over the fact that they are both children of divorce and they're in the divorced parents club, right? They basically end up reconnecting because of a job that they both get at the same place, and they end up becoming like these really unlikely friends. I don't want to say like causing mayhem, but they are. Like they're just like kind of all over the place all the time. I was trying to remember exactly what happens. Bailey can't stand Charlie, but they still become friends, and they ended up like really love spending time together, as well as Charlie insists that guys and girls can't be just friends. It's always going to be like one will end up having feelings for the other or whatnot. And so like Bailey's just like, you're dumb. Like guys and girls can literally be friends. Yeah, that's all I have to say about it. I ended up really liking it. There was like no explanation to that, but otherwise it's just a really fun young adult romance. Obviously it does deal with the fact that they're really struggling with the fact that their parents are divorced. You really see that within the story and within the characters, especially with the situations that they are going through or like that they're putting themselves through. They're causing issues on purpose because their parents are divorced, and they're just like, yeah, no, like this is the way it's gonna work. And so they really bond over that. And yeah, I ended up rating this one a 3.75 stars. I think it was just because they reminded me so much of Wes and Liz from Better Than the Movies that it was like hard to distinguish, like, okay, like is it just like a copy and paste of the same characters, or is it just like in like different storyline, or is there more to this that I just like didn't pick up? It was definitely like they just felt like they were the same characters in just a different book. I read a lot of books on my Kindle within these 3 months that I'm giving you a wrap up on now. So the next 2 books I ended up reading were both on my Kindle. This next one was The Last of the Moon Girls. I actually listened to this one through the Kindle app as well as I read it. I'm not gonna lie to you, I forgot I read this. Forgot I listened to it. It wasn't like that impactful, but I do, now that I know that I read it or remembered that I read it, I did enjoy it while I read it. It was definitely like, I don't want to say it was weird because it wasn't weird. It's definitely more literary fiction. So with like a subplot of romance in there, but not even, it's like the tiny minusculous thing of romance in there. But I think it's really about just like coming to terms with like who you are and not letting like your past define you. All that I remember is that I did enjoy it while I was reading it. I do highly recommend listening to it though, because I did enjoy listening to it more than I think reading it. I liked hearing all the voices and everything, and plus like I could do stuff while I was listening. It just like kept me more entertained, because I would have been bored if I just sat and read it, because not a lot was going on. It was definitely more of like an emotional journey for the character, not necessarily for you as the reader. So Lizzie Moon inherits Moon Girl Farm, and Moon Girl Farm has been in her family for generations, okay? And basically all of these Moon Girls have like essentially like magic powers, but not like magic and it really magic, you know what I mean? They all have like these like healing powers or something like that, and like in every generation every Moon Girl has had girls. Like they all like have had girls, and like they never have had a boy in their family ever. And then basically while going through this journey of like inheriting this house and then trying to sell this house, her grandmother who has left her the house was basically not pinned, but everyone assumes that she had murdered these 2 young girls when she was living there. Kind of bonkers, because it's just like, why would this woman have murdered these girls, type of thing. And so they're trying to solve the murders of those 2 young girls while this is all going on. Not a very good explanation I gave you. I do remember that it was interesting when I was listening to it, and I did enjoy it. The next one we have is the 3rd book in the Beyond the Play series, which is Stealing Home by Grace Riley. I don't want to talk about this book too much. This is Sebastian's romance. He is the adopted son. He is a baseball player, and it takes place at the same college at McKee University. Pretty sure that's what it was called. Like I said, I'm not gonna talk about it too much. It's a baseball romance, college romance. That's all you need to know about it. I gave this like a 2.5 stars. Literally so disappointed. I was like, wow, this is the one that I was excited for, because I just was excited for it. I liked Sebastian in the other books, and literally so disappointing. I hated it. Well, okay, I don't want to say hate it. I just like did not like it at all. So basically hated it. Anyway, let's move on. Okay, this next one, so good, absolutely loved, and that is None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. Lisa Jewell, one of my go-to authors, go-to mystery authors. I wouldn't call her a thriller writer at all. She definitely writes like hard-hitting mysteries where I'm like, dang, what the heck is gonna happen in this book, right? Like she always leaves you on edge and like really trying to figure out what's happening before the end of the book. Like she really is trying to get you, okay? This book follows 2 women who share the same birthday. The one girl says that they're birthday twins, right? So she meets her, and one of them is a famous podcaster. I think her name is Alex. Alex is a famous podcaster, and Josie been listening to her podcast and was like, oh my God, I love your podcast, and I think that you should let me be on it. And basically it's like, I have this crazy story that I would love to tell, and I want it to be documented through your podcast. Alex lets Josie into her life and starts telling her about her crazy story. It gets turned into a Netflix documentary. So you're seeing this through both real time and then the future in a sense because of the Netflix series. So you get both timelines. Very, very good. I think I ended up giving this one a 4.5 stars. Really, really loved this one. I thought it was so good. The only thing I did not love about this book was the ending felt very lackluster. I was like, okay, so like what is the actual ending? Because you didn't get a definitive answer about the one thing that she left you hanging on. Whereas like the other stuff like really was cleared up and like gave you an answer on. Whereas like the one thing that she like left, I think is meant to be open to interpretation. It felt lackluster for me because I wish that I had gotten an answer. But anyways, really, really loved it. I'm not doing a very good job of explaining any of these books, but again, Lisa Jewell, great mystery thriller writer. Great. I don't need to say anything else about it. Now I'm just gonna make you all confused. Next we have Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver. This is the second book in the Rose Hill series, and I'm not gonna lie, this one did disappoint a little. This entire Rose Hill series so far just doesn't hit the way that the Chestnut Springs series has. This one was definitely fun, but definitely didn't live up to the hype of like what everyone else was talking about. So basically, this is another like cowboy romance. This one follows Wes and Skylar. Skylar is a famous pop star and she ends up coming to Rose Hill because she wants to film an album with Ford. Ford, who is the first guy in the first books, has a producing studio, a record studio. Yes, he owns one of those and it's in Rose Hill. So she's like, I'm gonna come make an album with you. I need a break from the spotlight, from this world, the whole shebang. Right? So she ends up staying with Wes, who is like basically the next door neighbor, owns a horse farm where he like trains and breaks horses for other people, like work horses and stuff. And he's also a single dad. We love that. And obviously, you know where this is gonna go. I don't need to explain anything else. She's obviously staying on his property. He's there. They become friends. Other things happen, you know. But I will say in preface that Skylar is going through a lot at the time. You'll kind of see like that she's dealing with a lot of like manipulation and emotional trauma from being in the spotlight and like from her family and stuff. So just keep that in mind as well. I didn't love this one as much as like I thought I was going to. Like I really thought that this one was gonna be it for me. Where like in this series would have been my favorite. Even though there's only 2 books out right now. But I really thought like after reading the entire series that would have still been my favorite. No, I didn't like love it really. It did fall pretty flat for me. I ended up giving this one, it says I gave it a 4 stars. I think I'm gonna keep it at a 4 stars. I feel like I thought I rated it at 3.75. I was entertained while I was reading it. Like I did want to keep going. Like the couple just didn't hook me the way I thought they were going to. Next up we have Night Road by Kristen Hanna. This is the first Kristen Hanna book I've ever read and the only book so far. I do plan to read other Kristen Hanna books now. I really, really enjoyed this one. This book follows Mia and Jude. Jude is a very overbearing mother, really just like is so anxious and scared of anything happening to her children ever. We follow Lexi, who is just getting out of the foster care system and ends up becoming best friends with Jude's daughter. So you're basically following both of their stories at the same time of like everything that kind of happens in their life. Like this really one big major event happens and it kind of like turns the tables for everyone's life and turns it upside down. And then so after that big event happens, you're like following the aftermath of that. I can't remember. I don't think it's a dual timeline. I think it's all chronological. I was trying to remember. I think it's all chronological. Really good. I really enjoyed this book. It was definitely emotional and hard-hitting. I definitely was like feeling the emotions along with the characters while I was reading it. I also listened to this one. This one I listened to through the Kindle Unlimited app as well. Really enjoyed that too. So I liked hearing everyone's voices and like the story being told from different perspectives. But yeah, really, really enjoyed this one. I think it was a great first Kristen Hanna book for me because I know a lot of her books are very emotional and very like heavy hitting in a sense, I want to call it. Just because a lot of them deal with like real events that happen. She's definitely more of like a historical fiction writer. This is not a historical fiction. This is definitely more of her literary fiction set in the 2010s. So it's not historical fiction at all. I'm looking at my notes for it on my Goodreads and I didn't fully rate this book. I ended up rating it a 4 stars through Goodreads, but I guess I rated it a 4.5. I think I'm actually going to drop it down to a 4 stars because I don't really ever think about this book, but it was very, very good. Like, I very much liked the book while I was listening to it and reading it. Like I said, I was feeling the emotions along with all the characters while they were going through everything that they were going through. So I think it definitely is a 4-star read. Next we have A Flicker in the Dark by Stacey Willingham. Again, another book that I genuinely really, really enjoyed. This one I saw had really mixed reviews. I don't know. I just like, because everyone says they could guess what was going to happen like really early on, which I will say I did guess. Like I said this in like the reading vlog that this book is in, that literally a specific thing happened in one chapter and I said, oh, I know exactly what happened, because obviously, you know, like going in, like the synopsis of the book. Let me tell you the synopsis of the book really quick. You're not going to know anything about it if I don't tell you. Chloe is a psychologist in Louisiana, and when she was younger, her father was put away in jail, in prison for life, for murdering 6 teenage girls in their hometown. And then basically 20 years later, on the anniversary of all of this happening, and her father going to prison, all these girls, again, young girls around that age, start being murdered again with the same MO that her father did. But her father's obviously still in prison. A whole bunch of things that were happening to them were things that were not disclosed to the public, whereas she, who is a personal family member, would know because they were told by the police of these certain things. Basically trying to uncover the truth of if this is her father's doing or if the murders were actually committed by somebody else. Like I said, I really enjoyed this book while I was reading it. I did guess exactly what happened, but she does do a very good job of trying to like steer you in a different direction. And the reason I kept reading it was because I really wanted to know how everything was going to unfold. Like, so I go 2 different ways when it comes to reading like thriller books. If I can guess what it is, I'm not necessarily deterred from finishing the book. I want to know how everything else unfolds because I want to see if I was right. You know, like I want to see like how we got from point A to point B. If I think that the book plays out this way, I want to know exactly how they're going to write it. If it's lackluster, then I'll be disappointed and rate the book really low. But this one, I was actually really liked the way that she did it because she obviously wanted to throw you in a completely different direction than like what the actual plot twist was. So I ended up giving this one, I think, a 3.5 stars. Like I said, it's because I guessed the ending, like I knew exactly what was happening. But either way, I still really, really loved it. I actually recommend this book. I know a lot of people didn't love it, but if you guess it and you can get past whatever, then I think that it's a good idea. The next book I ended up reading was The Lost Bookshop by Evie Woods. And this one I listened to more than I read it. Enjoyed the audiobook way more than the physical read. Literary fiction, so it was a little bit more outside of my comfort zone of like the type of story that it was. This one has a bit of like a magical realism element to it, and it follows 3 different characters. Follows Opaline, Martha, and Henry. Opaline's timeline is different than Martha and Henry. So Opaline is 1940s, I think 30s, I don't remember, but in the past. Martha and Henry is present timeline. Henry is a rare book collector and he's trying to find this lost bookshop. And the bookshop is said to be owned by this Opaline, where he goes to the last known address of this bookstore, and what's there is a house, and that's where he meets Martha, and Martha's like, literally, this is a house I work at, like there's no bookshop here. And they become unlikely friends, and she ends up telling Henry a little bit about her life and like what she's doing there, and Henry ends up telling her about his job of being a rare book collector and like getting her kind of like into like what he does, because she ends up really enjoying that aspect of his life. Then we follow Opaline's timeline, which is obviously the past timeline of her just trying to be her own person and own woman in a time where like basically you're owned by a man. And so she keeps running away from her family because they want her to just settle down and get married, and that's not what she wants. She wants to be a book collector. She wants to be someone who either has like a rare bookshop, sells books, finds rare books. Basically, that is what it is. So we were following her journey as well, and how they're all gonna interconnect at the end. And the connection at the end is actually really cool. I did not really think that that's the way it was gonna be, but I really enjoyed it, so it was good. I ended up rating this one a 3.75 stars. Like I said, I really, really enjoyed it. It was definitely outside of my comfort zone. It was fun and exciting with that like bit of magical realism in there. All right, I'm gonna try and speed this up because I've been talking for a really long time and I'm not even halfway through all the books I read. Next one, again, not one I want to talk about. I didn't even like it. Alone with You in the Ether by Olivia Blake. I saw great reviews about this book. I think I was just too stupid to understand it. So I ended up giving it a 2 stars. I don't even want to talk about it. If you want to look up the book and read it, go right ahead. I'm not going to talk about it. We have Done and Dusted, which is part of the Rebel Blue Ranch series by Lila Sage. Okay, this was the perfect book to read after I read Alone with You in the Ether, because Alone with You in the Ether, like I said, didn't want to talk about it. I didn't understand it, didn't like it. Put me in a book slump, right? Or put me kind of in a slumpy mood. I read Done and Dusted. It was over. Was so giddy, laughing, kicking my feet. It was the best. Okay, it was so fun. This is a cowboy romance. Takes place, I think, in Montana or Wyoming. Don't remember. To me, same place. I know they're not. In a book sense, I'm like, oh, same place. I really loved it. This one is a best friend's brother, a little bit of an age gap, and enemies to lovers. Super, super fun. She is a professional barrel racer. So she's she's a legit cowgirl, okay? She is a legit cowgirl. And he owns a bar. And yeah, that's all I gotta say about it. I really, really enjoyed it. This one was a 4 stars. I honestly couldn't tell you the synopsis of this book. All I remember is that I absolutely loved it and that this was so fun and giddy, and I can't wait to read the next ones. And I would absolutely reread this book. Like, I think it is so fun, okay? So fun. Maybe then I would process the plot a little bit better. But yeah, I just remember all like the tropes from it. But yeah, okay, wait. I actually do kind of remember. She is trying to decide if she wants to retire from barrel racing and come home. So she comes home because she had an accident and she's like kind of scared to do her job again, you know? So she's like thinking about retiring. So she comes home to see this is what she would want to do and stuff like that. And that's how this romance starts happening, is because she runs into him and she's just like, this guy, always annoying, always here. What is this? Why is he always at my house? Things like that. Highly recommend. Next, we read A Man Called Ove by Frederick Bachman. Again, another stellar read, or a stellar listen to, okay? I think if I had read this book, I wouldn't have liked it as much as I did. This book's about a grumpy old man and just about his life, his day-to-day life. He gets these neighbors who move in who kind of turn his world not upside down, change his routine enough where it bothers him. This family just loves him. They're just yeah, no, we love, I think his name's actually Ova, not Ove. I keep saying Ove. But anyways, they just fall in love with him, and he just becomes a part of their little family, and his life slowly starts to change. And it's just a really heartwarming story about this grumpy old man. It was a really wonderful story. I really enjoyed listening to it. Like I said, I don't think I would have liked it as much as if I just read it. I think I gave this one a 3.75 stars. Definitely, again, outside of my comfort zone. I do really enjoy Frederick Bachman's writing, so I'm super excited to read more books that he has out. He has a lot of really popular books that have stunning reviews, okay? So I'm really, really excited to eventually get to those. Next up, another Kindle read by one of my favorite indie authors, and that is Behind the Net, which is in the Vancouver Storm series by Stephanie Archer. Okay, this book, again, had me kicking, screaming, and giggling the whole time. This is a hockey romance. We all know I love a hockey romance. This one follows Pippa. He has a generic name. That's why I can't remember it. Maybe it's not a generic name. It is. It's Jamie. It is a generic name. His name is Jamie. Okay, this book follows Pippa and Jamie. Pippa is going through a breakup, and so she needs a new job. So she ends up becoming Jamie's assistant, but the plot twist is that they went to high school together, and they're both pretending that they don't remember each other from high school. Crazy. The biggest plot twist was that they both had crushes on each other in high school, and neither of them knew. But basically, Jamie hires her as his assistant. That's how the story goes. Jamie is going through a lot with his mom, so that is something to consider. Next up, we have Daydream by Hannah Grace, which is the last book that we know of, because I don't think she's announced anything, in the Maple Hill series. This is Henry's book. This was way different than what I was thinking we were going to get with Henry's book. Henry is much different in his own book than he is in the other 2 books. So in the other 2 books, he's kind of interpreted as this offhanded comment guy who just says what's on his mind and doesn't really think of the fact that that may not be the most appropriate thing to be saying. Kind of comes off as kind of goofy and funny. Where in his book, he's not like that at all. I don't know. It was very weird because Henry is definitely a lot more of a reserved, doesn't understand he's very neurodivergent. He doesn't understand why people perceive him this way when he literally is I'm just saying what's on my mind. I don't understand why that's not the thing to say. So, and then we have Hallie, whose family really, really relies on her to literally do everything. And so she's this big people pleaser. And so when her and Henry become friends, they're trying to teach each other to I'm not explaining this right. They become friends. I literally have a reading vlog where I read this book and I went way more in depth with it and talked about it. For right now though, I'm blanking. Yeah, this video is not going well. So I'm very, very sorry, you guys. This is not, I don't know. In the end, I did enjoy this book. It was definitely a lot different than what I thought. I ended up giving this one a 4 stars, I think. I'd probably keep it at 4 stars. Like I said, I really, really enjoyed it. It's definitely my least favorite out of the series. I just didn't love or not necessarily love, I just didn't feel the connection between Henry and Hallie as much as I felt it between the other characters in the other books. Not that I didn't love them as a couple, I did. I thought they were very cute and complimented each other very well. I just didn't think that their connection kind of flew off the paper the way that others did. Next up, I read The Pumpkin Spice Cafe, which was a super popular book that everyone I think read this year by Lori Gilmore. Right? Yes, Lori Gilmore. This is basically a Gilmore Girls fanfic. So if you love Gilmore Girls and you want to read fall atmospheric book, this is it. This is basically Lorelai and Luke's like fanfic book. That's all I really gotta say. She comes to town, she inherits the Pumpkin Spice Cafe. So Jeannie now owns the Pumpkin Spice Cafe. Logan is basically Luke, brings her deliveries and stuff like that. It was very insta-lovey. I didn't really love this book. Very insta-lovey, as well as it was really spicy, but the spice did not fit the overall vibe of the book. Like, it was very weird. Like, I was like, this is not the type of book that I feel like should have spice in it. Like, this definitely feels like it should be a close door romance. So I'm not gonna go too much onto it because I didn't love this one. Obviously, like, fall reads like that, I definitely rate very differently just because they're meant to be read and like being atmospheric and stuff like that, like read at a specific time. I didn't love it, so I don't really want to talk about it. I think I ended up giving it like a 3 stars. I would read it in the fall time. Would I recommend it? I honestly don't even know. I guess if you're a big Gilmore Girls fan, sure, why not? I mean, I enjoyed it. I loved envisioning the characters as Luke and Lorelai, but otherwise, like, it didn't leave an impact. Like, it just kind of was there. Next book that I ended up reading was The Boyfriend by Frida McFadden. This was another book that I actually genuinely really enjoyed. Frida McFadden writes really great fast-paced thriller novels. So the main character, she is looking for the perfect man, and she ends up meeting this man who seems perfect, and he is, but there is a serial killer out on the loose who dates his victims before he kills them. And Sydney is like, oh my gosh, like, is getting suspicious of the man that she's been seeing because of all these things, being like, what if he is dating me and is gonna murder me? That was not a good explanation, but that is the gist of the book. That was literally the gist of the book. Very good. I gave it a neutral 3 stars. I had a good time while reading it. It was super fast paced. I really enjoyed the like mystery. There are 2 timelines that you are following. And seeing the way they connect is fun, but yeah, I really like the way that they came together in the end and what the plot twist was. The very end of the book, like the very last plot twist that she always does, definitely I didn't love. I was like, okay, is this gonna be turned into a series? Because then it was like, that was it. You know what I mean? So the end again felt lackluster for me. But like I said, neutral 3 stars. I liked it. It was fun and entertaining while I was reading it, and I don't have much to say else about it. So next we have Collide. Again, this was one I didn't really like, which was surprising because this is a college hockey romance. I eat up the hockey romances left and right. I didn't really love this one. This one had like really big time jumps. The main female character, Summer, she was kind of a problem. Honestly, throughout the whole book, she was the one who was like making everything an issue. Yeah, I don't really know. Honestly, I don't even remember the plot of this book. I couldn't even tell you the plot because it didn't stick with me. I think I ended up giving this one again a 3 stars. There was entertaining bits of it, but again, I didn't love it. It really took me a while to get through. That's all I'm gonna say about it. Next, we have Fall Into You by Carolyn Frank, and this is a series. I don't know if I'm gonna continue it. Like, this was a fun, like, sweet little romance that I read as like a nice little palate cleanser. It takes place in the fall time, obviously. This one is a brother's best friend romance. Like, the main plot of the book is like that they're secretly dating because the brother doesn't want the best friend dating his sister, so they're secretly dating because they both want to be together. The main girl ends up being kind of stupid because he clearly like is showing her like that he wants to be with her, but she's just being dumb. Okay, but yeah, there's a bit of an age gap. I honestly couldn't tell you again the plot of this book. I read it, it was fun while I was reading it. It was a nice little palate cleanser. Telling you the actual plot, I couldn't even tell you. Yeah, the biggest part is the fact that her older brother doesn't want them dating. Oh, and she's dealing with a lot since her dad passed, that's not a secret. So dating and stuff like that is like a little hard for her because she's always wanted like her dad to like meet the person that she's gonna marry. So like dating now is like hard because she can't seem to get a read on anything because she wants this approval from her dad that she's never going to be able to get. Next we have Just Friends by Madison Wright. This is the second book in the Nashville is Calling series. This is a fun, cute little closed door romance. Again, kind of forgot that I read this, so it doesn't really stick with me. I remember that the plot is a friends to lovers. They're actually strangers and they meet again through a mutual friend. Like, they meet each other at a bar and then they don't see each other and then they meet again through a mutual friend that they have, and he ends up moving into the apartment complex that she manages. But the thing is like, she's obviously not supposed to have relationships at any type of relationship with the tenants, like even becoming friends with them. She met him before and had a really good time with him before he had moved in, so she wanted to date, but but she was like trying not to date him, but then obviously ends up dating him and it not going well for her. This one again was another neutral 3 stars. Like I said, just kind of there. I don't really remember it. Okay, we have a few more books to get through. I'm gonna try and get through them really, really quickly. Last physical book I read was A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I think everybody knows what A Good Girl's Guide to Murder is about. So good, so entertaining. I loved it. Every step of the way I was hooked, honestly. Pip like trying to like uncover this murder because she thinks that this guy was wrongfully accused of the murder of his girlfriend. Crazy story. Crazy storyline that this 17-year-old girl is trying to solve this murder. But the entire way through, I was absolutely hooked, okay? I really, really loved it. Super entertaining, super fast-paced. I think I gave this one like a 4 stars though. I was kind of in a slump while I was reading this. It did help me out. So I don't love this one as much as I think I would have if I wasn't in a slump. Absolutely loved it. Thought it was so good, so entertaining, and I highly recommend that everybody read this. I can't wait to continue the rest of the series because I know the second one kind of follows a similar plot line with Pip. So I'm excited. Okay, I am actually really excited to move on to the second one. The last Kindle book that we ended up reading was The Knockout by Bella Matthews. I've read this series before. This is in the Playing to Win series. Yes, this is book number 3. This is this was a professional hockey romance. Follows Eris and Grace. Grace is a professional ballet dancer. He obviously is like a hockey player. They're trying to keep their relationship a secret because they don't necessarily know like how it's gonna work out because plot twist, her twin sister married his brother. It's a really fun, just good time. Like if you want a goofy, silly time, this is it, okay? It reads Wattpad and hits, okay? So highly recommend this book. Or this series in general if you're looking for a silly, goofy, fun time. All right, and gotta put my coffee down for this. The last books, okay, books plural, that I ended up reading within this last 3 months is an entire 7-book series, and that is the Harry Potter series. I'm not gonna go into detail right now about the books because there is a reading vlog coming, so stay tuned for that. Again, the Harry Potter series, great series. If you have not read it yet, definitely keep an eye out for my reading vlog. You will be hearing all my thoughts and feelings on every single book. Wow, this video was long and I talked a lot and I feel like you got nothing from this, but hey, who cares? Anyways, well, that is it for my fall reading wrap up. That is literally every single book that I read in September, October, and November. I had a good time. There was some really fun books in here. Some books I didn't like, obviously. But yeah, it was a really fun time. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really hope that you liked it. If you didn't, don't tell me because I'll just be embarrassed. Anyways, thank you guys again so much for watching. Don't forget to follow me on all my social medias as well as subscribe to my channel. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.